Hello everyone, welcome back to Joe Talks Politics. I am your host, Joseph Musia. President Cyril Ramaphosa has taken the unusual step of addressing attacks against him by EFF leader Julius Malema. In a scathing rebuke, the president urged Malema to play the ball and not the man. He took issue with what he says are personal insults that Malema has hurled at him over some time. During the debate on the opening of Parliament address last week, Malema told Parliament that Ramaphosa had sold out and that the trade union he led, the National Union of Mineworkers, was an Oppenheimer project. Let's get into it. The leader of the EFF has a long history of referring to struggle leaders as sellouts. In his speech, he used the name of the late President Nelson Mandela to attack Ramaphosa.
When it was clear President Mandela is not going to make you the first deputy president of the democratically elected South African government in 1994, you threw tantrums and even boycotted his inauguration. The same President Mandela you asked us to celebrate yesterday, you missed the historic moment to do so in 1994 because of personal aggrandizement.
Yet it was not long ago that Malema made similar allegations against Mandela himself.
Why did Nelson Mandela sell out the Freedom Chant? When Nelson Mandela returned from prison, he got separated with Winnie Mandela and went to stay in a house of the rich white men. He was looked after by the Oppenheimers. Nelson Mandela used to attend the club meetings of those white men who owned the South African economy at the time. He stayed in their complex. He stayed with them. He stayed in one of their houses. They had access to him 24 hours. And they told him that what he represents will not be achieved. And then that's when he turned against himself.
Malema used Ramaphosa's willingness to work with the DA in government to revive allegations that he was an apartheid collaborator.
We grew up being told that some of you were collaborators, but we gave you some benefits of the doubt. It was said in this house that you personally wrote a letter to the apartheid police accusing your fellow comrades of planting communist ideas in your head, and we refused to believe that story at that time. It now makes sense that despite the apartheid regime being so oppressive against all freedom fighters, you peacefully and uninterruptedly attended university and you were given your first job by the ambassadors of apartheid, capitalism, and colonialism. Without a hassle, you bought yourself a first car and a house with the assistance of the Urban Foundation, which was anchored by the Ruperts and the Oppenheimers, while your comrades were sleeping under trees in exile and languishing in jails. We asked ourselves as to how did you form a union of mine workers without being a mine worker? Can't you know? You were the conveyor belt between the workers and the super exploitative mining capitalists in South Africa after the Oppenheimers and Anglo-American had concluded that the mine workers must be organized.
Not too long ago, being called an apartheid collaborator was one of the worst things that could happen to a person, especially one who was involved in the struggle for freedom. You see, the regime had a habit of using collaborators to spread rumors about people being mpimpis. Once someone was labeled this way, it was a death knell of sort. Many committed activists, People who would not give the enemy any quarter found themselves ostracized and isolated. Even when people did not really believe the story, once the seed was planted, that doubt had been created. In many cases, these activists were actually killed, often by being burned to death. One of the most famous cases was that of Makis Kosana, who, upon being accused of being an impimpi, was killed by a mob while attending a funeral in Duduza on Gauteng's East Rand in 1985. It is perhaps with this history in mind that the president decided to address these accusations, which have been repeated several times.
You spent a considerable amount of time playing me, the man. What is important in building this country is to play the ball of development. You spend a lot of time talking about how the National Union of Mineworkers was formed. I would like you to read some books, but more importantly, I would like you to spend time to talk to people like Gwede Mantashe, who was a miner, who was one of the first members of the National Union of Mineworkers. I would like you to speak to people like James Mutlatsi, who was the president of the National Union of Mineworkers. It's a pity that Elijah Bahai, a stalwart in our struggle in the African National Congress, has passed on. I would like you to speak to people like Salai Salai, who is in Lesotho. I'd like you to speak to people like Director Matlala. I'd like you to speak to many members of the NUM who on the 2nd of December 1982 got together in Klerksdorp to form the National Union of Mineworkers. And as they formed that union, they said, we are building a shield and a spear that is going to improve the lives of mine workers. And they did exactly that. And this Anglo-American that you quote suffered the greatest brunt of the actions of mine workers. 5 years later, after formation, being the largest union in this country, they embarked on a 21-day strike and stopped the entire mining industry in this country. And you call that a sellout position. That was not.
MPs enjoy parliamentary privilege, and there is very little that the president can do about Malema's comments. If you enjoyed this and other episodes, please like them, share them, and subscribe. In this way, the channel can grow. See you in the next one.